50,000 years in the making. Australia has been built on heroes and heart. Explorers, builders, and the brave. This time, Australians fight for their share of the continent's wealth, perform on the world stage, and wage a war that will define the new country. This is the story of Australia. June 15, 1862, Eugowra, New South Wales. A wagon full of treasure. Unknowingly, it's on its way to an ambush. Heavily armed police guard 77 kilos of gold, heading from the diggings to the banks in Sydney. Australia is flooded with gold miners seeking their fortunes.
Down on the ground.
But not everyone
Open your mouths and you're dead.
wants to work for it. Frank Gardner,
Right on time.
horse thief, escaped convict, bushranger.
Get in your positions.
Gardner hijacks a wool cart and blocks the track. He's trying to pull off the biggest gold robbery Australia's ever seen. Gold fever has Australia in its grip, and it's producing 1/3 of the world's supply. Fortune hunters flood into Australia, the world's greatest population explosion, driven by gold. Over 40 years, from Ballarat to Kalgoorlie, 200 tons of gold is pulled from the earth. Today, that's worth more than $7 billion.
So you have this huge influx of immigrants coming to the goldfields to try their luck. And of course, very, very few people are successful. So there is great temptation if you know someone that's now making his way back to the city with a pocket full of gold. It's a very tempting target. And this is why we see this explosion of bushranging in the 1850s, 1860s, right up to the 1880s and the Kelly outbreak.
To take on the heavily defended stagecoach, Gardner has put together a gang. Harry Manns, Johnny Gilbert, Ben Hall. Men who are prepared to face the extreme hazards of bushranging.
I think the bushranger was so well loved
Keep still.
because our notion was that he only plundered those who could afford to lose it and who probably deserved it anyway. So there is that brash anti-authoritarianism in the bushranger myth.
Frank Gardner knew that the gold was well protected. In fact, there was a police sergeant with 2 troopers with rifles and pistols, so they had to plan carefully. What they did was they set a trap.
Whoa! Whoa! Stop! Whoa! What are you men doing? Get this dray gone!
Frank knows the punishment for bushranging is death. The gold on board the stagecoach would set him up for life.
Fire!
The police have more modern, powerful weapons. Frank and his gang rely on blind courage. When 2 police are hit, they run. Gardner and his gang are now Australia's most wanted. Frank Gardner's gold heist is front-page news. He joins the ranks of Australia's bushranger celebrities, like Victoria's Captain Moonlight and Harry Power, WA's Moondine Joe, Queensland's Kenneth brothers, and most famous of all, Ned Kelly. whose last stand will be made into the world's first feature film.
There's a little of the bushranger in all of us Australians. And that's why perhaps we have a natural, some would say unseemly empathy for the likes of bushrangers.
A day's ride from the scene of the crime, the bushrangers hide out. Their loot would be worth more than $3 million today.
I expected gold, but not cash.
But the gang won't get to spend it all.
Frank, troopers! Quick, gather everything.
With troopers on their tail, the gang pockets the cash.
Chop, chop.
But they struggle to carry all the heavy gold. They will dump most of it. Legend has it that Frank Gardner's gold is still out there, somewhere, buried in the bush. Hall and Gilbert will make a lucrative career from bushranging. But within 3 years, both die in shootouts with police. Harry Manns gets caught. He's the only bushranger to hang for the Ugara job. But Frank Gardner does something few bushrangers do. He retires to Queensland. He'll be caught in 2 years, serve a decade in prison, and spend the rest of his days running a saloon in California.
Frank was probably the only bushranger that died in his bed in San Francisco sometime around 1902, at the ripe old age of 74. So Frank was indeed a very bright individual, but he did, in the end, get away with it.
Fire!
In the 1880s, Australia enters its third decade of boom time. Australian cities explode. People embrace art and entertainment, but many regard Australia as a cultural backwater. Paris, 1886. Nellie Armstrong. Melbourne housewife, struggling mother. She's gambled everything for the audition of a lifetime. Australia is famous for sheep and gold, but it's considered a cultural desert. If she's successful today, she'll put herself and her country on the world stage.
Madame est occupée. Vous pouvez essayer de revenir demain.
S'il vous plaît, est-ce que je peux attendre?
Nellie wants to make it in opera. It's the pop music of the day.
I've been through an audition process myself, and that was nerve-wracking, let alone having to get a ship all the way to France. I mean, all that time to get nervous, only to get there and think, oh, I hope I don't blow this.
What is your name?
My name is Nellie Armstrong.
Where are you from?
Melbourne, Australia.
Madame Marchese. Her students become household names. But she only takes on the very best. Nellie has prepared an aria from Verdi's La Traviata. It takes a great voice to pull it off.
For a moment, I was tongue-tied. Then I thought to myself, this is your last chance.
Nellie just would have thought, she hates me. She hates me.
Melbourne, 4 years earlier. Nellie makes a name for herself as an amateur. No recorded music, no radio or TV. Australians create their own entertainment.
If you think about the way in which everyone in Australia today would want to have a widescreen television, anyone of any kind of income at all in Australia in the 19th century would have a piano. The classic night's entertainment would be to get the sheet music of the latest popular song and play it, and you'd all sing along. But that's what people did to have a great night.
The wife of the Austro-Hungarian consul once sang opera in Europe. She gives Nellie a letter of introduction to the best singing teachers in Paris, the opera capital of the world. Getting to Paris seems impossible, but it's not the only barrier in Nellie's path. Her husband, Charlie Armstrong. He forbids any talk of a singing career. What Charlie wants is a share of the small allowance Nellie's father provides for her.
It's not fair of you to ask me.
Nellie stands up to her husband.
Why won't you help us? I am trying to make this work!
Hands off me!
And suffers the consequences.
The fact in the 1800s that women weren't allowed to forge a career, and Nellie rejected those conservative rules and regulations and decided to stand up for herself is extremely powerful and pioneering, and shows a true sense of tenacity and self-belief.
Nellie Melba was both a woman of her time and a woman well beyond it, because this was an age where women's rights were starting to be proclaimed and advocated and fought for in Australia and indeed around the world.
Eventually, Nellie persuades her husband to come with her to Europe, but only after Nellie's father promises to pay their fares. For Nellie, everything depends on this audition. But it seems like her professional career is over before it's begun.
Mademoiselle, could you sing the last stanza of the song? S'il vous plaît. Ça va, c'est très bien.
Please, madame, say something.
We are going to work together very well. Bravo, bravo.
For Nellie to be thrown into an emotional turmoil whereby she thinks she's been abandoned and the whole trip has been a failure, and then to perform to perfection again, shows an incredible amount of control. It said a lot about Nellie herself. She was incredibly strong.
Eventually, Nellie Armstrong divorces her husband and changes her last name to Melba, after her home city. Her career coincides with the invention of the gramophone. She's one of the first global recording stars. Nellie earns more than any other artist and always handles her own finances. King George V makes her a Dame Commander of the British Empire. She becomes the most famous Australian in the world.
She was a wonder all over the world, greeted with Melba mania wherever she went. And Australians felt not that she was their darling, but that she was indeed a leader.
The thing about Dame Nellie Melba is not just that she was smart, interesting, a businesswoman, courageous, travelled, all of those things, but it's to be the person who does it first. She's paved the way for so many other women.
Nellie's rise from the suburbs of Melbourne to the boulevards of Paris has been meteoric. But for Australians back home, after 4 decades of prosperity, the working man's paradise is about to come crashing down. September 19, 1890, near Circular Quays, Sydney. After 4 decades of boom, Australia is dragged into a global financial crisis. Employers lay off thousands. Striking maritime workers picket ports around Australia, and the working man's paradise is under threat.
Come on, put your back into it. Higher. Over, that's it.
Wool auctioneer George Maiden, son of a convict, desperate to get his clients' wool bales on the ship to London.
And you go check around the back.
And keep his company afloat.
Check the side. I want the side all secure.
The striking workers are determined to stop him from reaching the docks. It's the start of a conflict that will decide who gets a fair share of Australia's wealth for the next 120 years. Less than a century after the British came to stay, Australia has grown rich on gold and wool. By the 1880s, white working men are the highest paid in the world.
We were a rich country, there was a building boom, there was plenty of activity going on, and Australian workers realised they had muscle and clout.
Now, in 1890, the global economic crisis destroys profits and jobs. Hard times spark a 10-year war that will threaten to tear Australia apart.
In the 1890s, there is this appalling crash. The banks collapse, businesses go under. And really it's brought about by the conditions that we're familiar with more recent crashes, and that is that there was rampant speculation on companies that actually weren't producing anything. And, well, greed, basically.
Union scum!
As world markets crash, the maritime strike paralyses trade and polarises Australia.
Down the back. I want you to check the back corner down there.
The mob grows in number and fury. Maiden's client is wool baron William Halliday. He owns 200,000 sheep.
Let's get this wool to London. Run them down!
He's not inclined to share his fortune. The wool ship to London sails in a few hours. Maiden must go now.
Open the gates.
But the workers aren't going down without a fight. In an era before welfare, public health, pensions or state schools, workers' jobs are all they've got. Labourer Frederick Townsend is unemployed and angry.
This isn't bloody London! Nor is it the bloody bush!
He wants the chance to earn enough for his family to live decently. What will become known as a fair go.
People got to a point where they just couldn't take any more. And being Australians, as that battler thing, whereas, well, it can only be pushed so far, but we're too fair. We're not going to be downtrodden. Eventually, we're going to kick up and say, no, this is not right.
Townsend makes a stand for what he thinks is right. Still a mile from the harbour, the workers seem to have won. But Maiden's father came to Australia in chains. He's determined to continue his family's rise. As workers will all over Australia, Townsend sees violence as the only way to drive his point home. Over the next decade, industrial warfare erupts across the colonies. In the Queensland shearers' strikes, workers torch wool sheds and fight pitched gun battles with police.
These great strikes of the early 1890s bring us to the brink of civil war. You've got workers and bosses willing to go to physical conflict in order to resolve their problems.
Maiden drives on despite his wound. The cops arrest 15, including Frederick Townsend. He gets 6 months. Today, George Maiden will get his client's wool to the ship and the markets in England. But the violence of the 1890s appalls Australia. The colonies create some of the first laws and courts in the world that force bosses and workers to resolve disputes peacefully and fairly. They are the foundation of Australians' employment conditions for more than 100 years.
We really believe in the fair go. I think that's what marks us out amongst so many other nations.
Faith in the fair go is one of the things that unites Australians. In 1901, the colonies federate. Australia, the nation, is born. In many ways, it is the fairest country on earth. But not for everyone. Australia excludes Asian migrants and refuses to recognise Indigenous Australians. Yet within just 2 years, Australia is the first nation to allow women not just to vote, but to stand for Parliament. A new country, a new century, and soon a war that will change Australians forever. Anzac Day, 1915, 4:30 a.m. An Australian submarine enters the most dangerous shipping channel on Earth. The crew's orders: penetrate the sea lanes behind Gallipoli and sink Turkish ships. Their success or failure will help determine the fate of the Gallipoli campaign and 20,000 Australian volunteers.
The reason so many people volunteered for that war was because they saw that need to serve and protect our way of life.
Lieutenant Commander Henry Stoker, captain of the AE2, prepared to take her where very few dare.
The captain of AE2 was a maverick. 3 other British submarine commanders refused. They did not like the idea of going through the Dardanelles. In fact, they said it couldn't be done.
From August 1914, Germany and Britain are at war. Turkey sides with Germany. Australia backs Britain with all the money and men it can muster.
There was really, tragically, a notion that a nation was not a nation until it had spilt blood, until your young men have proven themselves in battle.
Australia's first great battle of World War I begins here. The Dardanelles. The narrow waterway the Allies must control to defeat Turkey. The Gallipoli Peninsula guards its entrance. To the northeast, crucial supply lines from Turkey's capital. All heavily defended.
Slow ahead.
Stoker and his crew enter the home waters of the Turkish Navy. Massive guns defend its shores.
Enemy fire! 300 degrees. Emergency dive 10 down, maintain at 70. Diving, sir. Load forward ballast. Loading forward ballast. At 30. Depth, Suckling. God damn it, man. At 50, sir. Get us to 70, Suckling.
Petty Officer Charles Suckling. This is his first submarine posting.
65, sir. 65, Suckling.
Like his mates, he gets extra danger money.
40 degrees northeast, sir.
Blood money, they call it. He's about to earn it. In 1915, submarine warfare is new and dangerous. Reliable sonar is yet to be invented. Radios are erratic. The Turks' formidable defences include a deadly curtain of underwater mines. that no Allied ship or submarine has ever survived.
Minefield! Steady as she goes. Maintaining at 70.
Maintaining 70, sir.
The AE-2 sails blind into the Turkish minefield.
It's creepy, it's eerie, and they can't see a thing because they can't put their periscope up, they can't surface because they'll be caught.
Steady.
The lives of Suckling and his mates hang by a thread.
The next hour provided an experience never to be forgotten. The rappings and scrapings on the hull of the boat by the mooring wires of the mines seemed never-ending.
After an hour, they pass the minefield.
To be inside AE-2 is terrifying. This is a steel can, which if it's punctured underwater will drown you, and if it surfaces, it's likely to kill you from gunfire. So AE-2 is a very dangerous vessel to be in.
All right. Bearing.
The Australians are now deep in enemy territory.
2623.
The waters are thick with Turkish warships.
25, sir.
They are both targets and threats to the AE-2. The submarine's periscope gives away her position.
Enemy fire, shore position, 600 yards.
The Turks attack just as the Australians prepare to strike.
Prepare bow torpedo. Torpedo ready, sir. 300 yards.
A steel tube travelling at 20 kilometres per hour, packed with over 150 kilograms of explosives. Enough to blow a hole the size of a house in a ship's hull. The AE-2 strikes a deadly blow.
Emergency dive. Diving, sir.
But desperate for revenge, a Turkish destroyer tries to ram the sub.
We're at 30.
Readings.
At 50, sir.
We've made it. Well done. Well done, young man.
While Stoker and his men celebrate, the first wave of 20,000 Australians attacks the Turks at Anzac Cove. They show great courage, but barely make it beyond the beach.
Gallipoli was essentially a disaster in relation to being landed on the wrong beach and completely underestimating the Turkish defences.
But for 5 days, the AE-2 harasses Turkish ships resupplying their men at Gallipoli. It's one of the great naval achievements of the war.
AE-2 was the only unit on the 25th of April that achieved its objectives. The Army failed, the rest of the Navy failed, but AE-2 broke into the Dardanelles and cut the Turkish sea lanes of communication. It is the only good news on the 25th of April, 1915.
The AE-2 fights until she's too badly damaged to continue. Her crew abandon ship and sink her. Stoker and his men spend the next 3.5 years as prisoners of war. The Australian submarine still lies at the bottom of the Sea of Marmara. In some ways, the AE-2 is too successful. Her breakthrough encourages the British commanders at Gallipoli to stick to their flawed invasion plans. September 1915. The Anzacs have been bogged down in the trenches of Gallipoli for 4 months. Over 6,000 dead. More than twice that wounded, for gains in territory of a few hundred metres at best. Yet from this bloody stalemate, they will forge a new sense of Australia.
As the first guys hit the shore, and this is not made up, and this is not mythologising, they actually shouted as they were charging up the hill, "Come on, Australia!"
Sniper Billy Singh, Queensland Groo shooter, just 5'5", about to engage in a deadly duel for his country and to protect his mates.
Billy Singh is like a modern rock star. Everyone in Anzac knows him, including, in fact, several generals and even an admiral go up the front line to watch him shoot.
Officially, Billy has killed 150 Turks. Unofficially, 300. The diggers keep their own tally, like a cricket score. The Turks also have a crack shot assassin. The Aussies only know him as Abdul the Terrible. He's killed 70 Anzacs. Billy's determined to stop him shooting anymore. Billy Singh isn't even meant to be at Gallipoli. His dad is Chinese. Officially, Australia bans volunteers of non-European descent. But recruiters turn a blind eye. Billy Singh is too good to keep out.
Billy Singh's not alone in being a non-white Australian soldier. I mean, there are about 1,000 Aborigines who also joined the AIF, who are also not supposed to be in uniform and are also fighting for a white Australia. The test that's applied to these men is not, when they're in uniform, what colour are you? The test is, are you a good soldier?
In adversity, we all come together. And that's what Billy Singh did. In adversity, he goes, I know there's racism. I know I'm treated like a second-class citizen. But for the better good, for the greater good, I'm going to ignore that and fight for Australia.
Billy works stretches of trench nearest the hunting grounds of Turkish crackshot Abdul. He knows that if he keeps hitting his targets, Abdul will eventually come looking for him. Abdul analyses Billy's victims, checking entry and exit wounds. He triangulates back, looking for clues to Billy's hiding place. Abdul will stalk Billy for weeks. Billy Singh isn't the only Anzac looking after his mates. Lance Corporal William Beach, a 36-year-old builder from Sydney, invents the periscope gun. Made from army-issue shaving mirrors and old crates, it allows the Anzacs to shoot at the Turks with no risk of being shot themselves.
There's a really rich sense and a rich history of invention in Australia. It's that ability to make do with what you have and to be able to engineer the situation to your advantage.
Beach's ingenuity saves countless lives. But the periscope gun is nowhere near as deadly as a skilled sniper. Billy hunts the trenches where Abdul hides. Today, he'll get his best chance for a shot.
Got potential movement.
The sniper feels when he tumbles an enemy out of a tree or picks him off from behind a rock that he is saving the lives of his own companions. If allowed to live, that soldier will kill or injure an unlimited number of lads.
While the Australian closes in on Abdul's hiding place, so does the Turk pinpoint Billy's position. Two hitmen, each with the other in his sights. Both desperate to be the first to see a clean shot. Billy wins a rare personal battle in this industrial-scale war. He's awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal for his skill and courage. He puts his life on the line every day for his country and his mates. The kind of loyalty in adversity that becomes synonymous with Gallipoli.
Well, the Anzac spirit, to me, is something that's been carried on since Gallipoli and something that we need to protect, because what it is are the values that I believe we now have founded our culture on.
Despite the cost of thousands of lives, the Anzacs make little new ground. British military censorship means few Australians, including Prime Minister Andrew Fisher, are aware of the bloodbath. September 1915, Marseille, France. 5 months since the disastrous Gallipoli landing, the SS Multon stops on her way to London. Carrying a letter that could save thousands of lives is Australian journalist Keith Murdoch. Ambitious. Determined. One day he'll found what will become one of the world's largest media empires. Now, he must smuggle the secret letter past British intelligence. Murdoch has witnessed firsthand the dire situation at Gallipoli. Nearly 7,000 Australians dead, and the living pinned down. Still in sight of the beach they first landed on.
Perhaps the landings were not the greatest blunder. The greatest blunder was not withdrawing the troops as soon as it was obvious that the objective could not be achieved. The politicians and generals didn't want to admit they'd made a mistake.
At home, Australians are unaware of the mistakes and the war's full horror. They get only heavily censored letters and news reports from the front. Even Prime Minister Andrew Fisher is kept in the dark.
Do you know how Andrew Fisher got to learn of the landing? He read it in the newspaper like every other Australian citizen. That's the level of knowledge that the British allowed him to have. And he was the Prime Minister, tasked with the responsibility of placing his troops in war.
At Gallipoli, Murdoch gets the digger's perspective and quickly realises what Australians are up against.
I have given only a bare impression of life at Anzac. Life that is spiritual, mental and physical pain. No one at home can imagine what it is. It is worse than any picture conjured by inexperienced, peaceable Australians.
Mr. Murdoch, please take a seat.
Murdoch meets British journalist Ellis Ashmead Bartlett. He's been at Gallipoli since the landing, trying to tell the truth about the campaign. But military censors delete the grim facts.
They've censored the entire document. Everything. I need you to do something for me.
Together, the two journalists hatch a plan to blow the whistle on the Gallipoli disaster. A letter to the British Prime Minister that could save thousands of lives and put both of them in jail.
Whistleblowers wrestle with some really difficult ethics because, for the most part, they need to break contracts, break agreements, even break the law. And they wouldn't do that if it didn't mean a lot to them on an ethical level.
In Marseille, British intelligence officers hunt for Murdoch. They're acting on a tip-off. Rumours swirl that Murdoch has been betrayed by a fellow journalist. The letter he carries contains the truth about Gallipoli. It's dynamite. But only if Murdoch can deliver it.
Mr. Murdoch. What seems to be the problem? Mr. Murdoch, I have orders to ask if you're carrying any letters. Yes, I have one. It is for the Prime Minister of England. On the authority of His Majesty's government, I order you give it to me. Will it reach the Prime Minister? I presume it will, yes.
The letter vanishes into Britain's military bureaucracy. It's never seen again.
Thank you for your cooperation.
But Keith Murdoch is not finished yet. Remarkably, Murdoch has committed the entire letter to memory. He rewrites it. This time, he addresses it to the Australian Prime Minister, Andrew Fisher. It will become known as the Gallipoli letter.
It is undoubtedly one of the most terrible chapters in our history. 2 of our finest light horse regiments were wiped out in 10 minutes. We lost 500 men, squatters' sons and farmers' sons, on that terrible spot. What I want to say to you now, very seriously, is that the continuous and ghastly bungling over the Dardanelles enterprise was to be expected from such a general staff as the British Army possesses.
This letter gets through. The fallout is swift and far-reaching. The British commander at Gallipoli is sacked, and evacuation plans begin. On December 20, 1915, 8 months after the landing, the Anzacs withdraw. The Australian-run evacuation is the best planned part of the entire campaign. 20,000 men leave Turkey over 2 nights, and not one soldier is lost. They owe their lives, in part, to Keith Murdoch.
What Keith Murdoch did was puncture that bubble of hypocrisy, I suppose, and demonstrated that very often governments use rules about censorship not so much as to preserve national security, but to prevent blunders and inconsistencies being exposed.
After the war, Murdoch buys stakes in newspapers across Australia, the seeds of a worldwide media dynasty. Australia is shocked and devastated by the truth Murdoch reveals, but it stays committed to the war. The survivors of Gallipoli and fresh volunteers now head to France and the Western Front. Australian men and women now face the challenges of the worst killing fields in history.